Oh boy, so this one's not going to be fun. Captain Marvel was actually one of the worst Marvel films I've seen in a long time, which is surprising because I usually enjoy Marvel films, even the not so great ones. I think at worst Marvel is usually average, they're not great. Sometimes their stories can be a little generic and stale and feels like things are going by the books, and this did not feel that way, but to its detriment. Captain Marvel did not feel like a ironed out character, didn't feel like an ironed out script, and overall, I can't recommend the film, and if you enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. Let's get that out of the gate right away. It's my loss, okay, that I didn't enjoy the film. I had to buy a ticket, pay for it to go watch it. So if you did enjoy this movie, I'm very happy for you, and please let me know why you liked it down in the comments below. But yeah, if you're curious of my thoughts, then I'm gonna be honest with you. I have a lot of problems with this movie that I'll be getting into in today's video, and none of my issues with the film come from politics or me not liking women for some reason. And it's not even me not liking Brie Larson. I know a ton of people out there didn't like Captain Marvel simply because they saw how Brie Larson was in interviews and her stance in political views and stuff like that. I'm ignoring all that because I think Brie Larson is an incredible actress, and when we're reviewing films, that's really the only side of her we should be talking about. Maybe in a different video or in a different subject we can all talk about whether or not it was right or how she handled criticism or how she handled people who didn't like the movie. Putting all that aside, I've seen movies with Brie Larson in that I really enjoyed, like Room. She's a fantastic actress. In fact, if you want to watch a movie with a really strong female lead, I highly recommend you go watch Room. Not The Room with Tommy Wiseau. Very different movie. But yeah, Brie Larson starred in a film called Room that is about a hostage situation. Anyway, she's a great actress. That's all I'm saying. But this was not a great performance, and this was not a good script. And here's why. Let's begin. I think my biggest problem with Captain Marvel is, quite honestly, Captain Marvel. It's the main character of the film. As many other YouTubers have also pointed out, even when Marvel gets things a little clunky and their films aren't perfect, no film is, but usually when there's flaws in a Marvel movie, the one thing that Marvel likes to get right is the main character. Making them either likable or somewhat relatable as kind of the protagonist that's taking us through this journey. Typically, the protagonist is their strongest part, and that makes sense for Marvel's formula. They're so centered around their cinematic universe and making sure that everyone can come together and be recognizable and noticeable in their Avengers films. That way, even if the film you watched with that particular character wasn't amazing and you didn't love it, you can still appreciate them and notice them when they show up in the Avengers and go, oh hey, I know that character. I'm excited to see that character again. In my instance, that was Doctor Strange. I thought Doctor Strange as a movie was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was just kind of fine. I didn't love Doctor Strange. It felt kind of generic. It didn't feel very fresh, but there were some interesting elements in it, and I generally enjoyed it. But they really nailed down that Benedict Cumberbatch character of Stephen Strange so that we know him, we like him, and we can relate to him in many different ways. Even if he was a jerk in that film, that way, when Doctor Strange finally makes his appearance in Avengers Infinity War, we can all go, oh, hey, that's Doctor Strange. I know who that is. Good to see him back again. So it kind of makes sense for the formula of their universe that their main characters would be very strong. They either go through an arc, they go through a learning process, and with Stephen Strange, it was learning that, you don't know everything. There's still much more you need to learn, because before Stephen learns the ways of magic that Doctor Strange is always using, and teleportation and things like that, he's a doctor, and he thinks he knows everything, and he thinks he's better than everyone. So there's a little bit of an arc there that a lot of different Marvel films go through. It is a generic plot, but it does work pretty well. Another good example is the first MCU film, Iron Man, where he thinks he's better than everyone, he's kind of a rock star, and right at the beginning of that film, he's instantly thrown into peril and into a war zone and realizes his own weapons are being used against him. Holy crap, this is dangerous. You're ruining people's lives, including your own now. And it kind of brings a soul-like motion to him after his friend that he meets in the caves where they hold him hostage. He dies while he's there after he got to get to know him so well. So he realizes that he has this power and he has this responsibility, kind of like Spider-Man, to be careful about where his weapons go and try to help the world make it a better place, and that's why he becomes Iron Man. So there's lots of those plot points used throughout Marvel films. A main character that thinks they know everything and then has to be put in their place. And honestly, I really didn't get that with Captain Marvel. The film starts out with her kind of just being, a fighter, and she's training, and they're already in space. We're not really given any context. Who is she? Is she an alien? Is she a human? Why are her hands lighting up? And she doesn't even know her past. She doesn't know who she is. does, and throughout the film, once the aliens start looking into her brain and looking into her memories, we get glimpses of her past and we get little flashbacks, but honestly, she can't figure out who she is, and neither can the audience. Us, the viewers of the film, are still constantly wondering, okay, who is she? What is her character like? You know, is she very serious, straightforward like Black Widow? Or is she kind of funny? Is she got a hilarious side to her like Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy? We don't really get that chance on screen to get to know her as a character, which means that we have a hard time relating / feeling for her like we do so many other Marvel films. We see our characters go through hard times. In this film, we see Captain Marvel remember hard times in her past, whether it be getting knocked down at the baseball game or being disrespected when she was in the Air Force and training. I want to see that movie. This film had this kind of energy to want to tell things out of order, like focus on the aliens and focus on the planets outside of our galaxy and everyone fighting each other, and then just kind of reference her time on Earth. But I would rather see the film be in chronological order so we can get to know her character a little bit, experience some hardships with her so that we can understand her motivations a little bit. Because in Captain Marvel, it's just kind of like things are going on and she's strong and she's always been strong. So I just felt like the setting and the tone of Captain Marvel's character was not very fleshed out, and I didn't really relate to her or get to know her like I do all of the other characters of the MCU. And let me repeat myself, has nothing to do with her being a girl. It's not like Iron Man didn't need to have a past or didn't need to go through struggles. It's not like Captain America didn't need to go through rough times and points in his life where he was bullied for me to relate to him or for me to understand where his character comes from. No, in all those films, in those original solo films where they were the protagonists, we got to see that process happen. We got to see their hardships. We got to see them learn and have a little bit of a character arc. In Captain Marvel, I'm not really sure what this arc or what this learning process or what this coming of age story is supposed to tell us, because honestly, it just looks like she's really strong, she comes to Earth and she's still really strong, and she thinks she's smarter than everyone else, and then once she realizes that she's actually on the bad guy's side, which in my opinion wasn't really a big reveal, because at the beginning of the film we see that she's fighting on the side of a guy that was featured briefly in Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, the guy who goes, "Who?" Yeah, that guy. You know, we all knew him. He's fighting on the same team as Captain Marvel in this, who he plays a bad guy in Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm kind of like, okay, she's on the bad guy's side. These clearly aren't the good guys. So later in the film, when it turns out that the Skrulls, as they call them, these shapeshifters that can impersonate any character or figure, turns out they're actually just running for their lives and Captain Marvel's fighting the wrong side. Well, I can't help but say I kind of saw that coming. And also, a big problem you have to work around in prequel films is that we know who's going to survive and we know who's going to die, particularly when you put Phil Coulson in the film along with Nick Fury. I'm not questioning whether or not they're going to make it, because I know they do. They're in Avengers. And I also thought that the approach to Nick Fury in this film was completely unlike how we're used to seeing Nick Fury. You know, he's got funny quips and he has some kind of slick jokes here and there in the rest of the MCU, but for the most part, Nick Fury is viewed as this cool, mysterious, and kind of BA dude with a dark past. You know, that's why he's missing an eye, and he's someone who's seen some like real life war. He's someone who has a dark history that we don't know much about, and I think we're okay with that. I think that the audience didn't need to know a huge amount of backstory for Nick Fury, because his character has always kind of just been mysterious agent who knows a lot about the world and knows a lot about its dangers and wants to bring the Avengers together. So in this film, when they turn him into kind of a comedic character and he becomes comic relief, and you find out that he loves cats, and you find out that the reason his eye was scratched all this time was because a cat scratched him once, it kind of ruins previous iterations of Nick Fury in other films. Like in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, there's a scene where he pulls off his eye patch and looks someone in the eye and says, "You need to keep both eyes open." And it's a really, really dark scene, and the tone of that moment was really, really gruesome, and knowing that Nick Fury was willing to like pull off his cover and show his battle wounds to this guy, not to mention in previous films where he said, "Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye." That was meant to be like a learning point. That was meant to be a lesson for that particular scene when Nick Fury talks about what happened to his eye. So now Captain Marvel is telling me that the last time he trusted someone was him picking up a cat in the cat scratched him. I also thought the references to his eye being wounded in the film were completely over the top. There's a scene where they're doing a biopsy with an alien body, and the doctor there is like, how's your eye doing? It was as if they were looking at the camera, like winking really hard. How's your eye, Nick Fury? It was just too over the top for me. It's too easy, I think, when someone who's like a mild moviegoer, okay? Like, I don't watch these films religiously. I never read the comics. I don't know or care what those are about. But like, I know what happened in the MCU, and still they're putting in this so-called Easter egg, which is really just like batting someone over the head with a reference and hoping people in the theater go, oh, you know what? Nick Fury, he doesn't have an eye later in the other films, so maybe he'll lose it in this like, oh my god. I don't like films that treat me like I'm an idiot. I like them to be a little bit more advanced and like be thinking a few steps ahead of me. And honestly, watching this film, I always felt like we were predicting what was going to happen. Like, they kept joking about the cat, and they're walking around with the cat, and he likes petting him. And essentially, it's like, okay, you know they're going to do some kind of gag with the cat. And the one moment that we have a general say, you know, fight all the Skrulls, and man, these Skrulls are disgusting. Me and Wyatt and Dan in the theater were like, he's a Skrull. It just became very obvious, and I didn't feel like the film was being very intelligent with it. Even when Ronan shows up, it's like, well, we know Ronan's not gonna die because he's in later films. Or when Jude Law is fighting Captain Marvel and he decides to put his guns down and say, I'm so proud of you. Let's fight this hand in hand. Let's have you not use your superpowers to prove a point to me. It's like, she's just gonna shoot him. It's Captain Marvel. What do you think's gonna happen? So she shoots him and stops him and makes him fly away. So I just got so sick of this film being so predictable and not having a character arc of any kind, really, just kind of being like, I'm strong. And honestly, Captain Marvel kind of felt like a sequel to me. It felt like it was making references to the first movie, except this is the first movie. This is the movie where we're learning who this character is and who this person is. So no, it doesn't really make sense to me that they would make these references to scenes that never really were presented to us. At the end of the film, when she's plugged into this virtual reality and she's trying to escape it, she realizes, like, wait a minute, I've been fighting all of you with my arms tied behind my back this whole time. So there's just a chip in the back of her head that she pulls out, even though she's in a virtual environment, so I don't exactly know how that's possible. But she pulls the chip out and suddenly she can use her powers to her full extent, and the supreme beings that she's talking to in the virtual environment are just kind of like, oh no, we didn't think she could possibly just pull the chip out of the back of her head. Like, that's the realization. That's the climax of the film. That's the main character thinking, wait a minute, I've cracked the code. I know how to escape. Click. Oh, got it. Okay, now I'm unstoppable now. I can shoot photon blasts. I can fly. I can shoot lasers. Even Ronan is afraid to fight me. So I'm basically the most powerful Avenger in the MCU. Why? Because I shot an engine and I was sitting too close to it when it exploded. There's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief you have to have with Marvel films. I get that. But can we all just take a minute to say that's one of the laziest backstories for someone getting powers that we've had in the MCU? Like, I agree, none of the Marvel characters really are that realistic, but usually they're somewhat believable. It's like Thor is a god, okay? He's an alien, he's a supreme being, so it makes sense that he has the powers that he does. Okay, Iron Man is a super genius. He's like a really, really cool, charismatic Elon Musk. He can build things, he has nanobots, he can construct different tools and suits of armor. Okay, we get that. Doctor Strange has magic and he can learn spells, and you can see him trying to learn the spells harder throughout the film, trying to rehearse them in his head and train and not be so great at first, but over time get better. You can see growth in those departments, and you can see characters be like not good at something but slowly learn to become better. With Captain Marvel, she like from the beginning is already a really good fighter, fights throughout the film and usually wins, and then when she decides that, oh shoot, I'm losing, let me just unplug a chip from the back of my head, now I'm unstoppable. It's like, why didn't you do that in the first place? Also, this is a virtual environment, so how exactly did you pull the chip out of your brain? I don't know. I get that I'm ranting at this point, and it's could be semantics to a lot of you, but I could not hold my interest in this film, particularly because I kept expecting the cat to do something, because I was like, all right, clearly the cat, which is named Goose, is not really a cat, because it's so over the top that this thing is more advanced, and there's gonna be some moment where the cat does something weird, and I thought it was gonna turn out that Loki was actually impersonating himself as the cat, because the cat seemed fairly interested in the Tesseract for whatever reason. I guess cats like shiny cubes. So I was just waiting for something weird to happen with the cat, and then, without warning, the cat just turns out to be an alien monster, even though They found the cat in a top secret Air Force base, like in an archives room. Apparently the Air Force just lets cats walk around top secret Air Force bases and they don't care. And it also just so happened, they just got lucky, they found out that the cat happened to be an alien. Oh, okay, we didn't know that. It just happened to be lucky that a cat that's actually an alien was walking through a top secret Air Force base, and it just so happened to be a type of alien that can swallow a tesseract, and it will choose to never show its tentacles or never turn into an alien until the tesseract presents itself. Okay, like, I can get Iron Man, I can get Thor, I can get Captain America. I have problems with all the films they're in, but ultimately, you gotta admit, that's a little far-fetched. That alien that's capable of holding the tesseract would just so happen to be in the same Air Force base at the same time, and Nick Fury would happen to love the cat and want to take it with them. I don't know. It just make no sense to me. It was like anything could happen in this film. There were no consequences. I was never worried, and I never related to the main character. And I highly recommend you guys go check out the channel Red Letter Media, because they recently uploaded their Half in the Bag review on Captain Marvel, and the guy on that show, Mike Stacklasa, in like 5 minutes rewrote the plot in a chronological way that would make it more interesting so that we could learn from her character and realize, like, it's important for women to stand up for what they believe in, even in a male-dominated society, and she could fight up against the system and one day be able to fight off an alien race. Like, he rewrote it, like, so briefly on that episode, and it instantly turned it into a film that I was like, yeah, that sounds like something Marvel would make. It doesn't sound like the best film ever, but it sounds like a decent Marvel film, and even a film that would be satisfying to Brie Larson's political views or feminism as a whole, even though I don't really think politics need to be involved. We don't need to bring political stuff into superhero movies. They should be an escape from reality, not a reflection. So I don't even know why that has to be a point. Like, why can't I present to you this idea? Instead of introducing a new character that we've never seen in all these Marvel films, and also, one thing I was kind of looking forward to in Avengers Endgame was the fact that it was kind of the original Avengers, like from the first movie. You're not dealing with all these extra characters that Marvel has added along the way. Endgame could be a nice send-off for, like, the long-term members of the Avengers. Like, it'd be a perfect send-off for Iron Man, a perfect send-off for Captain America and Thor. Not necessarily that this would be their last film, but maybe it is, you know, that could happen in Endgame. They might have to sacrifice themselves or something. So this is the final film where we just have a reunion of the original Avengers, and they have to fight Thanos one last time. But now that Captain Marvel's involved, it sounds like Endgame is just going to be her fighting Thanos, and she'll probably win because she wins everything in Captain Marvel, and she has, like, unlimited superpowers because, again, she blew up next to an engine. If it's seriously that easy to get Captain Marvel's powers, why don't they blow up engines next to people all the time to give them superhuman abilities? I don't know. But if you needed to have a female character and you were like, okay, we've had way too many Marvel films that star white male dudes with a few exceptions. We need to have a female-driven film right before Endgame takes place. I would say do a prequel on Black Widow, which I know they've greenlit. They've announced that they are working on a film starring Scarlett Johansson, and it's rumored that Emma Watson could be involved in that film, which is good, and I'm happy they're making it, but that should have happened sooner, because that character's been involved with the Avengers ever since the beginning, but we never really got that solo film for Black Widow to learn more about her character and her background, even though it was heavily hinted at in the Age of Ultron, and I thought it looked somewhat interesting. Make a film about her. That way Endgame is more meaningful, because she's still alive in that fourth Avengers film, so that we go into it, we relate to her more, and we see her depth. And when you do a Black Widow prequel, you don't have to stuff it full of old Marvel characters like Ronan and that guy who says "who" from Guardians of the Galaxy and Nick Fury and Phil Coulson. You don't have to stuff it full of 90s references like Blockbuster and Radio Shack. You could just have a story that's thoughtful and meaningful about Black Widow so that Endgame is more special, okay? Hopefully that can be enough proof to you guys that this isn't a I hate woman video or that Captain Marvel's bad because she's a girl. No, I just told you all my problems with the script and the movie as a whole without mentioning at all that she's a girl. If this film starred a white guy, I would have all of the same problems with it and I would hate it just as much. It has nothing to do with the gender of the main character. Anywho, I would have much rather watched a Black Widow origin story than a Captain Marvel because I don't know her, and it feels like after this movie takes place, I still don't know her. It's just Brie Larson in a rubber suit who has unlimited abilities. So yes, quite the definition of Mary Sue. Anyway, that wraps up my thoughts on Captain Marvel and why I didn't enjoy it very much. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, or why you enjoyed it, because I genuinely genuinely envy you. If you enjoyed Captain Marvel, that's great. Legit. Like, I'm happy for you. I wanted to enjoy this film. I wanted to be proven wrong. But please, tell me what you liked about it, because I have very little good things to say about it, as you now know. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day. Take care.